this idea of, especially with remote work nowadays, this idea of like butts and seats versus results. As much as that makes sense on the surface, I think a lot of us still have a long way to go as far as like this paradigm shift about like, oh, somebody's not here, they're not working. You know what I mean? Nowadays, people can work from anywhere, and everything's becoming more digital. We have Microsoft Teams that we use. There's Skype. There's Zoom calls. There, you name it. The list goes on. When you as a leader or manager, what do you coach your employers to say like? It's about the results of the job. What was in their job description? It's the results of what they're putting out versus saw that you came in an hour late. What's up with that?
I think it goes back to what you said about, having that one-on-one relationship with the employee, being able to communicate clearly what the expectations are so you can actually measure them. Because if people are working from home and don't have a really clear picture of what they're supposed to be working on, how am I supposed to even hold them accountable?
Right.
And I think that's why managers get uncomfortable by having people not be next to them. It's in most cases because they don't have a really great way of measuring what performance looks like. When you know what the output's supposed to be, when you're seeing that come in, whether they're next to you, down the hall, across the country, it shouldn't matter. Right.
It's harder. It is much more difficult to manage remote team members. There's also a sense of they have to have their own internal drive too.
Oh, 100%.
So when you're working from home the majority of the time, there has to be an internal drive within you to stay focused and on task. And so I think it's also finding the right remote workers too. Or the right team members that can have more flex time and work from home, do different things, and setting the expectations from the beginning of what you are going to monitor. I think allowing team members to be adults and treating them like adults is the number one thing we can start with. And that starts with not micromanaging the 5 minutes they were late.
Exactly.
There are certain organizations that 5 minutes does matter. If you're in a retail establishment and you have to have those doors open exactly at 9 o'clock in the morning, otherwise you get a fine. Yeah. That means that matters.
It could be production environments too, where you actually have shifts and need to relieve people.
Absolutely.
It could be anything like that.
Absolutely. So it's taking each role and each job and each organization and trying to adapt to figure out what works and what doesn't work. And then setting those expectations.
And why I even brought this up in the first place, because there's a lot of white collar workers out there that they're behind a computer, right? And I think at one point we used to think like, oh, they're here, they must be working, right? But that's just not always the case, right? That people bring their baggage with them to work, and something may be going on mentally where it looks like they're working. They got their desk in order, they're behind the computer, but
they're typing something.
They're doing something. They're typing like sports scores in Google or whatever. They're not actively working. Versus as a manager, how do you shift your mind to say it doesn't matter if they're here or not, but the results are what speaks for themselves.
Yeah. It's interesting because it's not just even remote workers. It's even team members that are here. There's a lot of distractions now in the workplace. So that can be how many text messages people get on their iPhones to how many personal calls, how many, how many team members walk up and have conversations, how many times I can walk down the hallway and talk to 4 people on the way to wherever I'm trying to go, So there's just a lot of distractions, and just because you're in the office doesn't mean you're present the whole time.
Yeah, that's true. I think not even just focusing on somebody who's remote 100% of the time, but if there's a way to allow some flexibility, some balance, because otherwise all that personal stuff comes to work, and people are calling out for half days or full days because of one appointment, when maybe working from home because you're on that side of town, maybe that would help. Traffic is terrible right now. So people wanting to avoid that and being able to flex their hours to come in a little later, leave a little earlier, those kinds of things. I think, it's the intangible things that don't cost money that an employer can do to help even, retain and attract people.
Yeah. And it's not about the work-life balance, right? It's really work-life integration. So we need to really focus on what does that integration actually mean, and what does work-life integration, what does that look like for people? We've gotten so caught up in work-life balance that I think we miss. The word balance is the wrong word. I think it's really integration. And I think we get the best out of people when we give flexibility and autonomy to be treated like adults.